So it's still Savitri speaking. She has been answering all the things that he said, trying to belittle love, truth, ideals, beauty, all these things. He has been trying to convince her that all these things are worthless and meaningless. And she, from her side, has been showing to him and to us that this is not true. That all these things have a much deeper meaning than we normally think. But now she's going to speak about herself and her mission. She points out to him that what he has been saying is not correct. It's not the way things really are. O death, I have triumphed over thee within. I quiver no more with the assault of grief. A mighty calmness, seated deep within, has occupied my body and my sense. It takes the world's grief and transmutes to strength. It makes the world's joy one with the joy of God. My love eternal sits throned on God's calm. For love must soar beyond the very heavens and find its secret sense ineffable. It must change its human ways to ways divine, yet keep its sovereignty of earthly bliss. O death, not for my heart's sweet poignancy, nor for my happy body's bliss alone, I have claimed from thee the living Shraddhavan, but for his work and mine, our sacred charge. Our lives are God's messengers beneath the stars. To dwell under death's shadow they have come, tempting God's light to earth for the ignorant race. His love to fill the hollow in men's hearts. His bliss to heal the unhappiness of the world. For I, the woman, am the force of God. He, the Eternal's delegate soul in man. My will is greater than thy law, O death. My love is stronger than the bonds of fate. Our love is the heavenly seal of the Supreme. I guard that seal against thy rending hands. Love must not cease to live upon the earth, for love is the bright link twixt earth and heaven. Love is the far transcendence, angel here. Love is man's lien on the absolute. Dhanalakshmi.
All day I have triumphed over thee within. I quiver no more with the assault of grief. The mighty calmness seated deep within has occupied my body and my sense. It takes the world's deep and transmutes to strength. It makes the world's joy one with the joy of God.
So first she says, I have triumphed over thee within. Thee, she's speaking to him as a single being. It means normally in our normal speech we would say you. I have triumphed over you. It means I have conquered you. I have won my fight against you. I have won against you. To triumph, it's when you've done something very difficult and you say, I've won. And she points out to him that she herself, in her consciousness, has become stronger than death. She's not going to believe his words, and she's not going to be afraid of him, because she feels within herself stronger than he is. She says, I quiver no more with the assault of grief. You know this word quiver? You shiver. No? That quivering is in a way a sign of weakness. But she says, to begin with, she was struck by grief. But she says, now I'm no longer quivering with this attack of grief, of sorrow, despair. Inside me, she says, there's a mighty calmness, a powerful calm. The storm stirs up the sea, but after the storm has gone away, the sea becomes very, very calm and still. Sometimes there's not even a ripple, a wave, calm. Often at evening time, the atmosphere is sometimes, when all the work of the day is done, it becomes calm, quiet. So within herself, Savitri feels this powerful calm, this quietness. It is seated deep within her. It has a base within herself. That is the calm that comes from the soul. Deep within, deep inside. And that calmness, which is always seated deep inside, now it has occupied my body and my sense. So the body is not afraid, the senses are not afraid. Everything in her has become very, very calm and steady. The next line begins with the word it. What is this it?
Calmness.
The calmness, yes, that mighty calmness. It, that calmness, takes all the grief and suffering of the world and transmutes it. It's like magic when one thing is changed into another. In the fairy stories, the magician casts a spell and he transmutes the prince into a frog. Here it's just the other way round. That calmness takes all the suffering and pain and struggle, all the anxiety and worry and weeping of the world, and turns it into strength. And that calmness takes all the world's joy, all the many different kinds of delight that we can experience here in the world. It takes that and joins it to the joy of God, as if God is enjoying all our joy, and that calmness shares all His joy through the many joys of the earth. Is it clear? Anybody would like to ask anything?
It's more of an experience for me, if I may say that. Being in the mood of calmness, that's not even for me with the words triumphing somebody. I can triumph myself, perhaps, and then I'm more in the mood of calmness.
Yes.
But
so all that attack which death was putting on her, saying all this is worthless and I'm taking Shraddhavan away and you will never get him back. This is like an attack, no? But she has overcome that attack. She's experiencing this calmness, this strength, and this wonderful knowledge. So she has no more fear of death, and she's not deceived by his attempts to mislead her understanding. Suresh.
My love eternal sits throned on God's calm, for love must soar beyond the very heavens and find its secret sense ineffable. It must change its human ways to ways divine, yet keep its serenity of earthly bliss.
Thank you. So he was mocking her love and saying, don't you know it's just a function of your body, it's just the passion of your emotions. How can you think that that is eternal, that it has any value in the divine scheme of things? No? But she says, my love is eternal because it is based on a throne is a high seat where a ruler sits. No? So that is the seat, and this seat is the calmness of God. So her love is not disturbed, it's not troubled by passion, by jealousy, by resentment, by any of these things. It's an eternal love. It's the very nature of the divine soul. My love eternal sits throned on God's calm. She has been talking about how love evolves. We read it last week, no? That love that was the animal's urge. And where is that line?
4:17. 4:17.
Yes, here. Love that was once an animal's desire, and then a sweet madness. This is how we experience it, we human beings, when we suddenly fall in love, no? In the rapturous heart. Then perhaps it matures and becomes an ardent comradeship in the happy mind. We may find a partner whose mind exactly resonates with ours, and there's an enthusiastic, happy comradeship, a friendship, a closeness. No? But it can evolve further and become like a vast space, a yearning space, a space that is longing for something, a wide spiritual yearnings space. And then one individual soul can feel passion for the one supreme, the only one. The heart that loved man thrills to the love of God. A body, a human body, is perceived to be the chamber, the sacred shrine of the divine presence. So in that way, love must first become throned on God's calm, and then it must soar. You remember this word? What does this mean?
Flying high.
Yes, it's what a strong bird does. It flies up very high. Or if you have one of those balloons and you heat up the air, the balloon soars up into the sky. So our love must do that. It must rise higher and higher. It has to find its secret sense, its significance. What is this marvelous thing, love? He says its secret sense is something ineffable. It can't be put into words. We can only experience it when our love soars high enough. And our ways of feeling and expressing love must change from our human ways, which are appropriate to our present level of development. But the origin of our love is much higher than that. So it must change its human ways to ways divine. But then she says that doesn't mean that it can't go on feeling its earthly bliss, the way that we experience the bliss of love here in our humanity. It can keep its sovereignty of earthly bliss, the way that love rules us in our humanity. Not as something turbulent and passionate, but as a very, very sweet tenderness, more than sympathy, a oneness.
Sovereignty is connected with the kingliness.
Yes, a sovereign is one who rules. So sovereignty is the rule, the power, the rule that it has over us in our human ways, our earthly bliss, the kind of delight that love brings to us, ordinary human beings.
That means it should change into this divine life. Divine love also will be in the...
It can keep its earthly bliss. Yes. Barbel, will you read?
O death, not for my heart's sweet poignancy, not for my happy body's bliss alone, I have claimed from thee the living Shraddhavan, but for his work and mine, our sacred charge.
Yes. So again, she addresses death directly. That's who she's talking to. This power of negativity and darkness and dissolution. So she says, it's not to satisfy my heart's longing, the sweet poignancy of the feelings, the emotions of the heart. Poignancy is something that is sweet and painful at the same time. That's not the reason that I'm asking you to allow Shraddhavan to return to earth with me. It's not to satisfy the sweet longings of my heart. And it's not for the sake of my body. Being close to Shraddhavan does bring happiness to my body, but that's not the only reason why I want him back. That's not the reason that I have claimed from you the living Shraddhavan. I want him back alive to live with me. The reason I want him back has to do with our work, his work and mine, which is our sacred charge, our sacred responsibility. We have a mission. For that sacred mission, I need Shraddhavan in a living human body. And then she, in the next sentence, she explains why. Josie.
Our lives are God's messengers beneath the stars. To dwell under death's shadow, they have come, tempting God's light to earth for the ignorant race, his love to fill the hollow in man's heart, his bliss to heal the unhappiness of the world.
Yes. So our lives, of course, we can read this as meaning the lives of Shraddhavan and Savitri, but perhaps it means also the lives of all human beings. Our lives are God's messengers beneath the stars. There's this huge material universe, but perhaps our earth is the only place where there are evolved beings like this. Or at least this is what we are concerned with at the moment, the life of humanity on earth. So perhaps, definitely, she says, Shraddhavan and Savitri, we are messengers of the divine on earth, but perhaps that's true in a sense for all of us, that we are representatives of the divine in the material world. Our lives have come to live under the shadow of death. Here in the material world, we live under the shadow of death. Anybody can die at any moment. We're in the grip of ignorance and death. But we've deliberately accepted, our lives have accepted that we have come. And by coming, what we are doing is tempting God's light to earth. If you want to tame a wild animal, a squirrel or a bird, you will do it by putting out some food for it. You will attract it to make friends with it. That's the way this word tempt is. It's to make the light, the light of divine consciousness want to come on earth. Because there are beings here who are potentially conscious, who can receive and carry that light. That light has to come to earth to help cure all of us of our ignorance. We need God's light to help us to grow more conscious, less ignorant. The human race is an ignorant race, where all of us are looking for knowledge, even growing in knowledge, but we are still ignorant. There is so much that we don't know. That's one of the basic characteristics of humanity. There's a proverb that says, to err is human, to make mistakes is human because we don't have total knowledge. We never can. But if we evolve further and we grow in God's light, then perhaps we can come to the higher knowledge by which everything can be known. So our lives have come to earth as God's messengers. And they've come to attract God's light into this material world for this ignorant race of human beings. And they are not only attracting His light of consciousness, they're also attracting His love. His love should come and fill our hearts, our human hearts, which have an emptiness. They are waiting to be filled with love. A hollow, something that's hollow has an empty space in the middle of it. Sometimes a tree will be hollow. And it's living still, but there's an empty space at the middle of it. Or we can also say that somebody's words are hollow, that he says the words with his mouth, but he doesn't mean them. And the other thing that our lives are tempting from God is His bliss, His power of delight, to heal the unhappiness of the world. There's so much unhappiness and suffering. It's as if we don't really know how to be happy for more than a moment at a time. So we need God's bliss, which is everywhere and unalienable, to come to heal. If somebody is sick, you want to heal them. If somebody is wounded, they should be healed. So this unhappiness of the world needs to be healed. You read?
For I, the woman, I am the force of God, He the eternal delicate soul in man. Why will is greater than the law or death? My love is stronger than the bonds of fat. Our love is the heavenly seal of the Supreme. I God, that seal against the rending hands.
Thank you. Yes. So here Savitri is speaking about herself. She's a woman, and she says that as a woman, she represents the force of God, the divine conscious force of the Supreme. While he, Shraddhavan, is representing the soul in humanity. He's representing the eternal God. He's been sent to represent the eternal in humanity. So again, this is the symbolism of Savitri and Shraddhavan. She's an incarnation or emanation of the Supreme Divine Mother, the dynamic conscious power of the Supreme. And Shraddhavan is the soul, God's representative in each individual being. So that is why the lives of men and women are important. And then she says, because I am the force of God, the conscious force of God, my will is stronger than thy law, O death. In the Vedic tradition, which is the basis of this story, Yama, the god of death, is also the god of law and of dharma. He's the one who keeps everything in its place in the universe. And that is the way in which Savitri has power over him. If she can show him that her will is in accord with the way things have to be, then he will have to obey her. She is the conscious force who has manifested all this universe. Even in the traditional story, it's like that. It's by her correctness of speech, truth speaking, that she's able to win back the life of Shraddhavan.
And the very name of God of Death is Yamadharma.
Yamadharma, he has both aspects. Yes.
Yamadharma.
Yes. So here Sri Aurobindo doesn't give him a name, but he shows both these aspects. The aspect which is hunger, which is dissolution, which is destruction, but also he keeps referring to law, that there's a law in the material universe, and that's my law, the law of death. So she's claiming that my will is greater than thy law. You may have this law of the material universe, but I have a will which is stronger and higher than that. And my love is stronger than the bonds of fate. Fate is the determinisms, the way that things happen in the universe because of the laws of physics and the laws of karma. Fate, things happen, they have to happen because of things that have happened in the past. This is, she says, my love can change all that. It's stronger than your bonds, your ropes and chains of fate. Our love, this love between the supreme dynamism of the Creator and the human soul, this is a heavenly seal of the Supreme. When a king decides something and makes a decree, then he will put his seal, and that shows that this is his decision and it has to be followed. So the seal of the Supreme, she says, that love between the creative force and the soul of man, this has the sanction of the Supreme Lord. And she says, I'm protecting that seal. You want to just tear it open and destroy it. I'm protecting that. Chandra, will you read?
Love must walk case and live on the earth. For love is the bright wing which earth and heaven. Love is the transcendence in the fact. Love is placed life on the absolute.
Yes. So, love must not cease to live on earth, upon the earth. You can't take love away. You can't destroy love. Love must not cease to live upon the earth. Because love is the connection, the bright, shining connection which links earth, the material world, with the worlds of higher consciousness. It links the earth and the heaven. And even more than that, love is the messenger. An angel, we have this picture of a divine being with wings, but an angel is a messenger who makes the connection between the divine and the earth. So she says, love is the messenger of the transcendent, the eternal, the infinite, who is beyond the manifestation. But that he seems far away, but our connection to the transcendent is through love. And more than that, love is man's lien on the absolute. Lien is a French word meaning a tie which can't be broken in principle. And it's a word in legal language. Lawyers use this word. If you have a document to show that you have a right to some piece of property or to some compensation or something like that, that's a lien. So she says, love is the sign of man's connection with what is absolute. We are here in the world of relativity, but we are not cut off from the absolute world. There's a connection. Love marks that connection. Yes, you go on.
But the woman pressed the darkness aside. With the irony, laughter of his voice, discouraging the arrival of the stars. Even so, man checked the truth with a splendid thought.
Shall we pause there? Yeah. So he's also not giving in. He's not accepting her arguments. To the woman, death the god replied, and he laughs. It's not a nice laugh. This is ironic laughter. He's mocking her. With the ironic laughter of his voice, he's discouraging the labor of the stars. Sri Aurobindo often speaks of the labor of the stars, of all the hard work, the energy that is going on in the universe to keep evolution moving forward. But with his laughter, he discourages that labor. He says it's not worthwhile, it's not going anywhere. And to Savitri, he mocks her. He says, that's just the way you human beings cheat the truth. You get out of the truth, the reality, the hard reality of things with your splendid thoughts, which aren't worth anything. So now we'll finish the front row. Joel.
Thus wilt thou hire the glorious Shraddhavan, mine, to weave from his ideals gossamer hair, a fine raiment for thy body's mute desires, and thy heart's clenching, greedy passion clothes.
So he says you're going to hire somebody, you're going to hire the mind. If you hire somebody to work for you, he's a laborer for you. So you're going to pay somebody mind to work for you. But he says mind is just a charlatan. He has nothing genuine to give you. A charlatan is a person who on a fairground sells fake medicines or cures or goods that they look nice and shiny, but they are not worth anything. A charlatan. He's giving you something that has no real value. So that's what the mind does. Of course, he's got a very bright and glorious appearance. He's very convincing. Are you really going to call on his services to weave from his ideal's gossamer air a fine raiment? Gossamer. Anybody knows what gossamer is? Spider's web. The threads that spiders weave. And actually it's a very, very strong substance, relatively. And I have seen in a church, in an old cathedral in England, a piece of cloth woven from spider's web. And there somebody has painted a picture of the Virgin Mary on it. It's not very big, so like that. But gossamer is something we think of. It can be broken, it can be blown away. It's not strong, but in fact it is very strong. So he says that's what mind does for you. It weaves things out of gossamer, out of these little threads. And are you going to make him weave a dress, a garment, to cover up your desires, your naked desires, dress them up and make them look fine? You're going to justify the passions of your body with all these high thoughts about the value of love. To clothe your heart's clutching, greedy passion. You just want to eat somebody up with your so-called love. It's just greedy passion. Patricia.
Daub not the web of life with magic hues. Make, rather, thy thought a plain and faithful glass, reflecting matter and mortality. And know thy soul, a product of flesh, a made-up self in a constructed world. Thy words are large murmurs in a mystic dream.
Yes. So to daub is to paint in a rough way. So don't now put bright colours on this gossamer web of life. Mind can do that. It can paint them with magic hues, with magic colours. But it would be wiser if you use your power of thought and make it into a very plain, faithful glass which reflects the reality of matter and of mortality, of death, that things have to die. If you do that, if you make your mind clear, plain, faithfully reflecting reality, then you will have to know, you have to recognize that your soul is just a product of the body. A least gland, he says somewhere. Who is it? Who is this that doesn't know that the soul is a least gland in the body? Something, or a disorder of the brain. Your soul is a made-up self in a made-up world, a constructed world. And the words that you are uttering now, they may sound very grand, but they're just like somebody talking in their sleep, murmurs in a mystic dream. I think we'll stop there for today. He has more to say. In fact, the rest of the canto is just a back and forth, a conversation, exchange of arguments. So we can go back to where we started, at the top of page 633. Savitri is speaking.
O death, I have triumphed over thee within. I quiver no more with the assault of grief. A mighty calmness, seated deep within, has occupied my body and my sense. It takes the world's grief and transmutes to strength. It makes the world's joy one with the joy of God. My love eternal sits throned on God's calm. For love must soar beyond the very heavens and find its secret sense ineffable. It must change its human ways to ways divine, yet keep its sovereignty of earthly bliss. O death, not for my heart's sweet poignancy, nor for my happy body's bliss alone, I have claimed from thee the living Shraddhavan, but for his work and mine, our sacred charge. Our lives are God's messengers beneath the stars. To dwell under death's shadow they have come, tempting God's light to earth for the ignorant race. His love to fill the hollow in men's hearts, his bliss to heal the unhappiness of the world. For I, the woman, am the force of God. He, the Eternal's delegate soul in man. My will is greater than thy law, O death. My love is stronger than the bonds of fate. Our love is the heavenly seal of the Supreme. I guard that seal against thy rending hands. Love must not cease to live upon the earth, for love is the bright link twixt earth and heaven. Love is the far transcendence angel here. Love is man's lien on the Absolute. But to the woman, Death the God replied, with the ironic laughter of his voice, discouraging the labor of the stars. Even so men cheat the truth with splendid thoughts. Thus wilt thou hire the glorious charlatan mind to weave from his ideal's gossamer air a fine raiment for thy body's nude desires, and thy heart's clutching greedy passion clothe. Daub not the web of life with magic hues. Make rather thy thought a plain and faithful glass, reflecting matter and mortality, and know thy soul a product of the flesh, a made-up self in a constructed world. Thy words are large murmurs in a mystic dream.